that your light bulb will be going on in your head. I hope as we start to understand, after me, you've got experts lined up who are going to take you through the how-to, the real ways in which you can improve your business performance, where you can start to not just take the challenge of change that I spoke of yesterday, but perhaps implement the real business of change. And what we need to understand with that, of course, is, as I said last night, you have to get ready to connect to your market. Your market is out there. It's already doing an awful lot of the things that we're struggling to do in business. We spoke yesterday of the pace of business, the speed at which you need to operate. Nobody has ever been asked to work as hard or in as difficult conditions or as demanding conditions as we ourselves are being asked to work and perform on a regular basis. The new economy has changed everything. That's what's going to be unpacked for you today. There isn't going to be the old way of doing things any longer. And what we need to focus on, as we said again yesterday, and you'll hear an awful lot about it today, is the power of people. Anders, when he speaks after me in a moment, is going to be talking about exactly how, as an individual, you have as much voice, thanks to today's technologies, as you do from the broadcast company CNN. We're going to talk about the importance of people, and we're going to talk about the importance of technology. How you marry the two together to read this new changing world in business so that your business becomes as mobile as your customers. All important. And we've got to create that match today. We've got to tie the business end of our operations right into the hearts and minds of our customers. So that's what we're going to start with this morning. And the word start for me is a reminder that we need to consider new ways of these doing things. Almost, if we're going to target and focus on this new market, we need to study it. We need to think about it. We need to assess what's going on and what's happening in our business world. We have to reflect on it. We've got to think about where we're going to go. And before we jump in with all the new ideas that you're going to learn today, we also need to test, to put a toe in the water, to see where things go. You don't need to rush in and go massive right from day one. We can start to think about this appropriately. So what's going to happen today, ladies and gentlemen, is you require some innovative thinking, new ways of doing things. Don't try today, as you listen to the experts present, don't try and think of the old way of your business squeezed into new technology. You've got to think about the new technology first and how your business fits with that later. It's not just new ways of doing things. It's doing things that are fundamentally different. And we need to understand those differences. Our problem as human beings, when we grasp these new concepts, is that it's very difficult to spend that time to sit back, to study, to think, to assess, to reflect, and to test. We're not geared to do that, not in our business lives, and not as human beings. Why? Because of the way our brain functions. What happens with your brain? All of us as human beings, every animal on the planet has the same initial response when we're confronted by something. It's called the fight or flight principle. And your brain needs to decide within a matter of the time that it takes to sneeze, the time that it takes to flip a page in a magazine, whether in fact you're going to engage or whether you're going to turn and run. All animals work on this same principle. In the time that it takes to strike a match, we generally, as humans, make life or death decisions. Here's why. Our brains are programmed for it. When you see this image, and it's real, and it's running down the road towards you, instantly you look at that image and you decide what it is that you're going to do. You're going to escape, you're going to flight, you're going to go, you're going to run. You're not going to stay and tackle it. Now that response, that decision that you've made, generally affects the way we think in a business sense as well. And it's not just humans, it's every creature on this planet that decides the same thing within 2 seconds. A chameleon does exactly the same. Does it puff itself up, make it look big, or does it change its color and blend into the background? And it does it instinctively in the time that it takes to strike a match or sneeze. But you see, when we do this, all of us have this response built into us. Every creature on this planet has that response. Mostly, for chameleons, it's simple. You either stay, or you stand and you fight. But what happens to us when it becomes more complicated? What happens when you have to use the rest of your human brain to start rationalizing this out? This is where we're going to have an issue today. You've got to challenge yourself today not to think in the 2-second rule. I need you to sit back today. That's why it's going to take you 2 days to learn this stuff. Because I don't want you to decide in 2 seconds. I want you to sit back and think. Not an instinctive response. We need to spend more time working on what we need to implement, the things that we'll learn today, or we run the risk of getting it wrong. Better not to start if you're going to take an instant decision and go following your gut. Rather sit back, start, study, think, assess, reflect, and test a little bit. That's my best advice to you. Because again today, even with all the experts that we've got lined up here, you're going to see some confusing traffic signals. You're not going to know tomorrow when you go back to work which way to run. Do I go now? Do I turn left? Do I go straight? What do I do here? So my job this morning really is to share with you what I call the 7 deadly sins of business and marketing. The 7 mistakes that people generally make when we're deciding too quickly as to whether we're going to stay or whether we're going to fight. And if we study these 7 deadly sins and assess each one of them, these maybe that I can leave you with this morning will be the things that will help set the principle for what comes later today. The first sin is really the sin of lust. Kind of strange to talk about the sin of lust. Especially when the photograph is a train track, railway lines. But let me tell you what we lust for in our businesses. Normally, we believe that our marketing, our business, has become justified. So we lust from unchanged products, unchanged goods, unchanged services. We lust for more and more profit. And we don't change anything. That's why the train tracks are there. If you look at the biggest 500 companies in the world, the Fortune 500, from 100 years ago, in the year 1910, the 500 biggest companies in the world from 1 century ago. How many are left in business today, 100 years later? 14. 486 of the world's biggest companies in less than 100 years have gone out of business, bankrupt. They ceased to exist. Why? They stuck to those train tracks. They refused to change. They thought their way of doing things was the way that it was always going to be. And hey, look, we're successful. Have you not seen what we've done? They all said. But the problem is, by not changing, which is what we have to do, and we have to implement the things that we're talking about today. Otherwise, we're in grave danger of running the same risk. And don't just think it's old-fashioned companies that went out of business. If you look at the 500 biggest companies in the world from 1986, 20 have already gone out of business in the last 30 years.